It's the Brad and John Show.
It is the Brad and John Show for real. This time I screwed up, forgot to do something, and I normally do. This is B Block. This was broadcast, or is being broadcast in the future. You can listen to it, and it came out originally on Wednesday, December. I keep saying December. Why do I keep wanting to say December, John? January.
I know why, because it's been a long December, and there's reason to believe maybe this year will be better than the last. Counting crows.
You think? Hold on a minute. I have to find this text that was sent to me yesterday. Okay. Here, I'm going to reply right down this. We are talking about you. Okay.
Tell her to wake up. If she's not already awake, tell her to wake up.
Okay.
She's awake. She's awake. She listens to our show before it goes live. She's texted us thinking that we were actually on the air when we were still doing a replay.
Okay. Okay, here's the text from yesterday afternoon. The BJ Show needs to apply for White House press corps privileges under the new rules just announced by Press Secretary Karoline Leavitt. She meets all of John's criteria. I didn't get a look at her shoes, but I'm sure she's still ovulating.
Ooh, yes. And I think she's of a breedable age too. I mean, just visually, it looks like
she's in her 20s, isn't she? Is she like 28 or 29?
Yeah. So I mean, that's getting she's still okay.
Did you watch the press conference by
No,
any
but
chance?
I've seen clips on social media, and they are fantastic.
She comes out on stage, and from the very start, she is in charge. I have to be honest with you. I didn't know too much about her. You know, I know she was very much involved in Trump's campaign. But when she came out, I thought to myself, yes, this woman is really going to be an excellent press secretary. You know, I mean, and once again, she's got a tough act to follow. After KJP, I mean, you have to really, really, really be on your game to be better.
You have to be great at going through a binder and looking up answers.
Right. And one of the other things that I thought that was very good about her was she never said, I'll circle back to that. You know?
Yes, exactly. Now, Brad, the main answer I saw was her answer about how many illegal immigrants were actually criminals, and the answer she gave on that.
And she says they're all criminals. They're
all criminals because they've all broken the law. And I love that she said, I know in the previous administration, they didn't talk about it like that, but it's a new day, and we're gonna call criminals criminals.
See, here's what I fear. We've talked about this before. I was referred to the pendulum swinging. Okay, I got to clear my voice here. Hold on a minute. And cough. I'm still getting over my stupid head cold or whatever the heck I got. Okay, the pendulum has swung from one direction, way left, to another direction, way right, okay? And that bothers me because of the fact that now we're going to have people going like, yeah, we warned you about these Republicans. They're all crazy nuts. They say everybody comes in the country is illegal. They're all illegal. Nobody's legal anymore. They're all illegal. We're going to put them in a plane and take them to the airport and send them back to a different country. Get what I'm saying?
I do get it, but maybe that's what people voted for by a wide margin.
Well, but see,
like it's kind of exactly what we wanted. Was now, Brad, you've talked about the value of having somebody come in who's a disruptor, who makes radical change. You don't want someone, for example, sitting at the Capitol and meeting with key legislators for 2 weeks. You want them out doing press conferences and making a lot of noise. And Donald Trump has gone out for 3 weeks and made a lot of noise and is doing very disruptive things. Like, if that's what you vote for, you can't have it both ways. You can't say I want a disruptor, but I want him to do things incrementally.
But see, John, this is our basic debate that you and I have back and forth. Okay, I'm saying I like to see that Trump, like perfect example, last week. He starts off in D.C., leaves D.C., goes to North Carolina, surveys all the damage there, and essentially says, this is horrible. Things have not progressed like they should. You know, he's putting FEMA on notice. Look, clean up your act. You got to get these things done. These people have to get back to life. We have to clean up this mess. You know, then he gets on his Air Force One, and he flies to L.A., the same thing. And he has a press conference with Karen Bass, who looks really bad in the press conference. Is he parts of this? She seems...
No, I haven't seen it. No.
She seems like she's just like totally nervous. She's got the president, there, and he's taking questions. And then he jumps on a plane and he flies to Las Vegas and he meets with casino workers. He says, I promised you no taxes on tips, and I'm going to do that. And then he goes to a casino and he's watching guys play craps, and he's kibitzing with the guys at the craps table. And then he gets on a plane and flies back. Okay, that's my example of a leader. And I'll give you another perfect example, okay? Kristi Noem. Did you see the story about what she did?
Yes. I sent that to you yesterday.
Yes. Kristi Noem goes on ICE raids. Kristi Noem is the former governor of North Dakota. She's now, DHS secretary, whatever the heck she is. What is it, DHS? Is she the DHS secretary?
Yeah, she's Homeland Security, yep.
She's the one that took over from Mayor Orcus, who, once again, they play this bit all the time on the Armstrong and Getty show, which comes up in a half an hour right after our show, where he's being asked if he's going to show up at some congressional hearing. They subpoena him, and he says, I have a busy day tomorrow. I have a busy day Wednesday. I have a busy day Thursday. And he's the one that they put him in front of the congressional committees, and they would say, well, how come there's all these illegal immigrants streaming across the border? Remember the border is secure? The border is secure. The border is secure. That would be like saying, hey, isn't that a White Castle over there? Oh, no, that's Tony's restaurant. That has the finest steaks in the St. Louis area. It's white glove service.
Yeah, they're real tiny and they slide right down into you.
Right. But it looks like a White Castle to me. Oh, no, that's not White Castle. That's the most expensive and the highest class restaurant in the St. Louis area. And you go, I swear that's a White Castle. It's got a drive-through. Tony's doesn't there. Oh, yes, Tony's now has a drive-through. It's like you can see it with your own eyes, but yet somebody's telling you, oh, no, that's not what you're seeing. You're not seeing that at all.
Yeah,
so
it'd be like somebody in St. Louis City saying the crime numbers are down, but that's a different story.
Okay, I will just say one thing. Kristi Noem, okay? She's on an ICE raid. She's actually with the ICE guys. What was she in New York City? I think she was. She was in New York City.
I don't know if it was New York City. I didn't actually. When Kristi Noem is in the picture, I'm usually not focused on the text.
Okay, here she is out there with the ICE team. All I can say is, you illegal immigrants, this is a woman that when her dog didn't obey her, she took it out and shot it. Okay, so once again, don't mess with Kristi Noem. But my point being, she's on the ground, she's doing things, but John's going to say, well, she should be in her office and she should be directing her staff to do those things.
That's absolutely not and it's not what I said yesterday, and that's not the approach. We just have a different view on corporate people, Brad, and we don't need to beat this dead horse again. But I think it's great that Kristi Noem is out there, especially early on, showing that she's still learning about what's going on, showing that she's there, that the folks that are actually enforcing the law there are important to her. Now, that's a little different than Herb Keller doing 15 minutes on a tarmac to get saps like Brad to think, oh, wow, he's out there on Thanksgiving. That's a little bit different. I think it's great, by the way, that Trump went to North Carolina. He needed to be there. Kristi Noem needs to be on these raids early on to show that she's engaged and to show that she's not sitting in office, Brad. I happen to agree with you on this.
You what? What? You agree with me on this?
I do agree with you on this, Brad.
Because, see, I look at this and I think to myself, these are the type of people that I appreciate, because you hear this term all the time. I get in trouble with my friends when I argue this. I get people that say, well, you're a dyed-in-the-wool Republican. No, I'm not. I mean, you've been with me long enough, John. I
would say that you're for sure. Sorry to interrupt, but you're right. It's hard to – I would never call you a partisan Republican, Brad.
Right. I still criticize Keogh. You say, well, he's in meetings with Jefferson City. Get his butt out there on the road. They got a corporate plane or a company plane, whatever, a state plane. He could be anywhere he wants. And he's got a state trooper detail. He could say, hey, drive me to St. Louis. It's only an hour and 45 minutes. And once again, they could fly with lights and sirens. They could make it in probably an hour.
I love it. Day 3 of beating this dead horse. You were making a broader point though, Brad. No, I think the horse is actually on the way to the glue company, and you're still chasing it with a stick. But go ahead, Brad.
Well, that would be even what would be better, to beat a dead horse or beat a dead dog like Kristi Noem.
Now, what we didn't, here's a shiny object for you to get you off track, Brad. Did you know that when I'm sure you did, because you're an expert on state transportation, having served on a MoDOT committee that did nothing.
Yes.
Did you know that if you're transporting cotton in the state of Missouri, you can't drive faster than 40 miles per hour? Did you know that? Excuse me, 45 miles per hour. Did you know that?
Really? Is that a law from like 1930 or something like that's never been taken off the books?
So you make the point exactly. Senator Jason Bean from down in the southeast part of the state, he's a big cotton producer, and he has a bill that says that he wants to be able to allow people that trade cotton, that traffic cotton. Right now, the state law says you cannot drive more than 45 miles per hour. And according to Jason Bean, this law was written back when you would harvest cotton and throw it in the back of a four-wheel trailer and take it to the gin. And now, of course, we have very sophisticated baling technology where they're round bales and they sit flat and they're not going to roll out of the back of a trailer. They're hauled by semis now. And Jason Bean is like, look, here's a great example of an outdated law on the books. We should be able to transport it at 65 miles per hour instead of at 45 miles per hour.
Yeah, but does anybody comply with that law? Do you mean to tell me that the tractor trailer guys who are hauling cotton on I-55 are doing 45 miles an hour?
Well, I don't know, Brad. I mean, I don't think they're driving like Shelley Barr.
Okay.
I mean, I think they're probably adhering to Missouri laws. Now, this Missouri Net piece is not accurate because in one place, it's written by a gentleman named Anthony Morabeth. And at one point, it says the speed limit is currently 40. And in the headline, it says 45. But, a lot of news outlets aren't big on consistency. But, Brad, I didn't know that. I didn't know that cotton was so special that we had to drive slowly.
Well, I don't think it was special. I think it was because of the fact that you didn't want the cotton flying into people's faces as they're driving down the highway. I think that's what they were talking about, right? I mean,
well, yeah, of course. I mean, let's not take it to its ridiculous end there. But yeah, I agree. And you know what? I bet the Senate passes this out of committee, and I bet it passes the Missouri Senate. Good for Jason Bean.
Well, there's an interesting article. I think it was years ago in St. Louis Magazine that talk about all the outdated laws are still in the books. And this is the interesting thing. You get something that happens, and you get some congressman, some state or federal congressman. We need to pass a law against this because this is wrong. And, for example, they gave all these laws in the city of St. Louis. I believe this is still on the books in St. Louis. It is illegal to drive through any intersection in the city of St. Louis at more than 5 miles an hour, okay? That is a carryover from the horse and buggy days where there were no traffic controls, there were no stop signs. You had to bring your horse and buggy to a slow walk as you went through the intersections. Otherwise, you might have an accident in the intersection, someone coming at intersecting a roadway or whatever, and your horse would ran into their horse and your carriage would overturn or your wagon would overturn. It's crazy stuff like that that's still on the books.
And remember back in the day, too, because they had the red light cameras back then, and they would read the actual branding on the horse. And then you would get something, the postman, when you went to the post, you would get a letter that said that you owed a bunch of money.
Well,
and then it would go to the new child care thing in St. Louis City. The We Work or We People or whatever it's called is going to run that new child care thing.
Well, it's just like the situation with John from the respect that, and where was I going with this? I just lost my train of thought because somebody sent me a funny text. I can't remember where I was going with this. Okay. No, the idea being that there's all these crazy laws and somebody should go through and take them off the books. I mean, what I was going to say was we are still broadcasters for the most part are still governed by the Communications Act of 1934. Okay, this is 2025. That the to this day, there are certain things that the FCC will cite that refer back to the Communications Act of 1934. Okay, back then, radio was still somewhat in its infancy. Matter of fact, if you know,
and so were you. You were in your infancy too.
I was born in 1935, so I was born.
You were, yeah. See, you were a newborn.
Right. I was a newbie. Okay. So what? Nobody changes this. Okay. Last thing before we break. Okay. I went to the O'Fallon Chamber of Commerce meeting yesterday, and you'll never guess who I sat next to. And I talked about you to this gentleman. Do you know what was interesting?
What are his initials?
And here's the crazy thing. I don't know his name. I asked him for a card, and he didn't have a card on him, and he left early because of the fact that. But here's the interesting part. He was there not to essentially, press the flesh and talk to people. He was there to give the Pledge of Allegiance and then the benediction. Now, he's a man of the cloth, but he wears a piece of cloth on his head. Do you get where I'm going with this?
Yeah, he's Jewish.
He was a rabbi, and he introduces himself to me as St. Charles County's only rabbi. There's one, and it's interesting.
Are you serious?
No,
wow.
I swear to God. I hear that. I swear to God, or wherever the Jewish people believe in. They believe in a God, too. Okay. He said to me, I said, where's your synagogue? And he says, it's on T.R. Hughes. I go, where? And he describes where it's at. I go, I drove by there the other day. I don't remember seeing that. And he says, well, there's no building yet. We have 9 acres. I said, so you're the rabbi of a synagogue in St. Charles County, in essentially O'Fallon, that has no building, and you're the only rabbi in St. Charles County. He says, yes. So I said to him, let me tell you a story. I do this radio show with this guy by the name of John Combest. And I talked about one morning on the air, I talked about schmutz and on the air. And John, tell me if I'm wrong, John said he'd never heard this word.
Never heard of it.
And I said it was Yiddish. And John said that I must be making that up because how in the world could I know a Yiddish term when you went to Washington University with a bunch of Jewish kids and you never heard the word schmutz? And he laughed and he says, he looks at me and he says, okay, I'm going to test you. What is schmutz? And I said, it's like something you get stuck on your face. It's like goo on the ground. He goes, exactly, that's schmutz. So that's my story from yesterday.
Hey, as a listener just texted us, Brad, you could allow him for the short term to have some space on the cloud.
You know what? I never thought about that.
I mean, why wouldn't you allow him to run like an interstitial ad? Your whole thing is automated anyway. It's like a jukebox. Why wouldn't you work in an ad for him, for the right price? If he can afford 9 acres, he can afford to buy a little advertising on godsquad.cloud.
And that would be perfectly in step with me of reaching out across boundaries. They talk about reaching across aisles. I don't care if you're Jewish or Catholic or Lutheran or everybody. The God Squad is non-denominational. We're non-denom. That's what we are. Matter of fact, you know what? That's an excellent. I'm going to find out who this guy is. I know. I call somebody at the O'Fallon Chamber of Commerce, and they'll know exactly who it is. Maybe I'll look it up on their directory. Maybe it's on there. I can't remember.
I bet he'd have it on there. That's a great idea. Thanks to our listener for that, Brad. Thanks to this particular listener.
Yes, he needs to be on the God Squad cloud. John, man, I tell you what, we've got listeners that talk about how John is so excited about the new press secretary because she's ovulating and let me ask you this. If she was wearing comfortable shoes, would your opinion of the new press secretary for Trump have gone down?
Yes, absolutely.
But if she were wearing like 1-inch heels, would you go, I'm a little bit disappointed, right?
Yeah, I mean, because that's just kind of mailing it in. And again, we would need to actually check where she is in the lunar cycle and then see if it's worth having a conversation with her. And Brad, I don't leave outside 270 for much. So we'd have to time that just right for me to get to the airport and me to go.
2-inch heels would get you a little bit more interested.
Yeah, now we're talking. We're talking. And I don't need them to be stabby. I don't want them to hurt my ears when.
When she hits your head with him, is that what you're saying?
We'll see.
Okay. We have to take a break. Boy, you're not going to hear anything like this on Rick and Tracy's station. I'm just telling you right now. Okay.